And welcome back to Citizen Extra. Thank you so much for staying with us. This hour we are joined by Ken Gichinga, who's an economic analyst. We're staying with Amos Kimunya, former transport minister, who during his tenure saw the very beginnings of the SGR. Ken, good morning. I want to begin with you on the question of the cost-benefit analysis, something we've been trying to prod in the dying moments of the previous hour. Tell us, there's been a lot of concern from economists, from the opposition, from even financiers like IMF, World Bank, saying the cost of Kenyan projects, the cost of borrowing is too high and may be reaching, a tipping point. What is your own observation in terms of SGR, its cost right now standing at the region of 350 billion?
Thank you, Anne. As you say, it's a cost-benefit analysis, which means there's a cost to it and there's a benefit to it. I think you've prosecuted the benefits of the railway, which is increased cargo, faster speeds, but you're right to say that there's a cost element that has not been fully prosecuted. What I would say is we've spent, if you combine the phase 1 and phase 2, it's going to go into the 600 billion phase shillings. Right. The biggest concern there is how are we going to refinance this kind of debt? A lot of people ask, we have a meter gauge railway. The cost of upgrading that meter gauge railway would have been anywhere in the range of 50 billion shillings. Was that considered before we moved to the standard gauge railway? What are the benefits that a standard gauge railway provides on top of a meter gauge railway? So I think if you look at the economics of it all, it's still a bit blurry, and a lot of people still look at the debt ratio in terms of debt to GDP. We've crossed over 50%. So I think that still remains a major problem, not just for the SGR, but for all the Vision 2030 projects moving forward.
Right. And you've talked about debt being at over 50%, and we've heard the government say that it's in its own agreement with international monetary institutions, they can go well up to 60. What do you think of that?
They've said that, but the reality is, even if you look at the best economic studies, even from the top Ivy League schools, they argue that developing countries should not approach levels of debt beyond 50%. Sometimes we try and compare with countries like America that have 100%, Japan 200% GDP, but we forget that these countries borrow in their own currency, and that's a whole different ballgame. In Kenya, we are borrowing in a foreign currency, which means that even if the exchange rate was to move even slightly, we end up paying up more installments. Yeah. All
right, hold that thought, Ken. The Deputy President, William Ruto, is now speaking at that launch. Let's listen in and then we'll talk.
The moment is historic as we give unto ourselves as the people of Kenya a new transformative standard gauge railway. The facility we are replacing was built not in the last century, but in the century before, more than 122 years ago. Today, on this Madaraka Day, Mr. President, you will make all of us proud as you launch this great facility that will be convenient, safer, faster, cost-effective, and most importantly, enjoyable. They say failure is an orphan. Success has many fathers. There are many who dreamed about this facility. There are others who thought about it. There are many who planned about it. But it is the Jubilee government under your administration that has made this a reality. And this reality that this morning we are witnessing is a milestone in the development of our country. Mr. President, we're very proud to be part and parcel of your team that has finally delivered on a railway that has been thought about for many years. Ladies and gentlemen, with a lot of pride, I want to request His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya to make his statement and officially launch this facility. Mr. President.
Pamoja, asante. Asanteni sana, tuketi. Asanteni sana. Your Excellency, Mr. Wang Yong, State Councilor of the People's Republic of China, and the Special Envoy of His Excellency President Xi Jinping, President of the People's Republic of China. Msisikie nikisema State Councilor mufikirie ni yule councilor tunazoea hapa. Huyu ni Deputy Prime Minister bwana, msicheze. Invited guests, wananchi wenzangu, hamjambo. Leo ni siku ya kihistoria na ni siku kila Mkenya pahali popote alipo astahili ajivunie na afurahie taifa lake. Today we celebrate laying one of the key cornerstones to Kenya's transformation to an industrialized, prosperous, middle-income country. Today, we join hands as 45 million people to embark on a new journey that seeks to create new opportunity, new jobs, and greater shared prosperity for our country and for our region. Today is a day that each and every one of us should shed their different cloth, be it of tribe, religion, political affiliation, and say that today 45 million of us, together with our neighbors, celebrate a milestone in our country's history. I want to take this early opportunity through you, State Councilor, to express my own personal gratitude and the gratitude of the people of the great Republic of Kenya to His Excellency President Xi Jinping and the people of China for the collaborative support that has resulted and culminated in this day and in this celebration. We will have much to say as we start this journey. But mine, most importantly, is that as we celebrate the 54th Madaraka Day, 54 years since Kenya attained the right to determine her future destiny by Kenyans, we also celebrate today a new beginning for our republic. We also embark today on a new chapter in Kenya's history, a history that was first started 122 years ago, when the British, who had colonized this nation, kicked off the train to nowhere, a train that was characterized and was criticized by all those in the British Parliament as a train to nowhere, but a train that ultimately formed the basis of the new nation of Kenya. It was then dubbed the Lunatic Express because it was going nowhere. Today, 122 years later, despite again a lot of criticism, we now celebrate not the Lunatic Express, but the Madaraka Express. That will begin to reshape the story of Kenya for the next 100 years. I am proud to be associated with this day. Tutasema mengi tukitembea, kwa sababu leo ni siku ya kwanza, na ningependa kusema machache kwa Wakenya wenzangu. Jameni, ni safari tumeanza, na hakuna safari ambayo haitakuwa na matatizo kidogo kidogo. Na mimi nataka niwaambie, hata sisi leo ni siku yetu ya kwanza kuja kusafiri na gari la moshi ambalo tutaipanda leo tukielekea Nairobi. Na wauliza wa Kenya, kwa sababu sana sana kupitia runinga na magazeti yetu tuwajua sana kulalamika, sasa iko hivi, jameni, leo ni siku ya kwanza, bado kutakuwa na matatizo. Tunaelewana? Mpaka wale ambao wanaanza kazi washike momentum, na ndio tuwasema hii ni soft opening. Tuungane mikono na tusiwe walalamishi. Tunaelewana? Tuwasukuma wakati huu, tuhakikishe ya kwamba tuanze kwanza gari moja kila siku inatoka Mombasa na gari moja inatoka Nairobi. Waende watatue shida, tuendelee mpaka baada ya miezi kadhaa tuwe sasa na schedule ile ambayo itakuweko. Be patient, my brothers and sisters. Be supportive and help with constructive criticism so that we can improve and ultimately have what we want, which is a world-class working railway. Tunaelewana? Ya pili, kwa sababu lazima tuambiane ukweli wa Kenya wenzangu. Ya pili, kuna wale wachache kati yetu ambao hawapendi mema, wanajiona wenyewe ati kuna mtu anafikiria ati ndio uhuru labda au serikali ionekane vibaya, unaenda unangoa reli, unaenda unangoa stima za kushikilia, ati ndio ionekane ya kwamba serikali imeshindwa na kazi. Nataka nikuambie hii reli sio ya Uhuru, hii reli sio ya Ruto, hii reli sio ya serikali, hii reli imejengwa na pesa ya Wakenya milioni 45. Hii reli ni ya Wakenya. Na nataka niseme hivi, ndio wakati wale ambao watashikwa wakitenda maovu wajue mapema. Kuna sheria ambaye iko ya kwamba wewe ukiwa muharibifu au mwizi kwa mali ya wananchi au ile tunaita critical infrastructure, hukumu hiyo inaitwa economic sabotage. Economic sabotage ni ile inaitwa capital offense, yani ukihukumiwa wewe unaenda kinyonga. Tunaelewana wenzangu? Mimi ni wa kwanza kukubaliana ya kwamba kama rais, katiba imenipatia nguvu ya kuweka kidole, lakini mimi nimesema na nikaamua ya kwamba siwezi niweke kidole. Hata wale ambao walihukumiwa kunyongwa, nikaweka kidole nikasema wawache kunyongwa, mtu aende jela maisha, kwa sababu mimi sipendi kusema nimeweka kidole ati mtu anyongwe. Hapana, nikasema watu, hata wale ambao wamehukumiwa kunyongwa, nikasema hapana, wasinyongwe, lakini waende jela maisha. Mimi nataka nitangaze leo ya kwamba wale ambao watahukumiwa kwa sababu ya kuharibu mali ya Wakenya, kuharibu haki ya watoto na watoto wa watoto wetu, nasema Mungu nisamehe, lakini hawa ambao watahukumiwa nitaweka kidole wanyongwe. Tumeelewana wenzangu? Mumekubaliana na mimi? Hatuwezi turuhusu watu wachache watuharibie haki na watuharibie mali ya watoto na watoto wetu. Si ni hivyo? La mwisho, vile nimesema, tutaendelea kuona matatizo. Hata mimi leo nikitembea kufika hapa, tumeona bado kuna mambo kadhaa ambaye bado yatakikana kufanyika. Hii barabara ya kufika hii stesheni, waziri, lazima itengenezwe ndio wananchi waweze kufika kwa njia sawa. Ya pili, tumesema hii ni gari la moshi la Wakenya, wananchi, sio matajiri, ni wananchi. Tuataka uhakikishe pia hapa, kwa sababu nimeona hakuna, mjenge stesheni hapa pahali matatu inaweza kuja ifike, ndio mwananchi wa kawaida asiwe anakuja kupanda reli akitembea. Muweke hapa, tunataka stesheni ya matatu ijengwe hapa, ndio wananchi wetu waweze wafike. La mwisho wenzangu, hii reli tumesema ni ya wananchi, na tumejadiliana sana ni kwa njia gani tutahakikisha ya kwamba wananchi wataweza waitumie mali yao. Na tunasema ya kwamba container ambaye average container ya mizigo ambaye average zamani ilikuwa kati ya shilingi karibu 1,100 kusafirisha container kutoka Nairobi, kutoka Mombasa kwenda Nairobi, isiwe zaidi sasa zile container ambazo zitabebwa na hii reli isipitishe 50,000, iwe nusu. Na ndio wananchi wajue faida ya reli yao. Tumefanya hesabu pia ya kwamba kutoka Mombasa kwenda Nairobi, watu wakitumia basi ni karibu shilingi 1,200 hivi. Si ni kweli? Tumesema ya kwamba mwananchi wa kawaida awe anaweza apande hii reli kutoka Mombasa kwenda Nairobi na asilipishwe zaidi ya shilingi 700. 700 shillings. Kutoka Mombasa kwenda Nairobi iwe ni shilingi isipokuwa zaidi ya shilingi 700. Tumekubaliana? Wale mabuda ambao wanataka kulipa zaidi kwa sababu wanataka kwenda amekaa sijui vile amekaa, hiyo ni yenu, mtafikiria. Lakini mwananchi asilipishwe zaidi ya shilingi 700 kutoka Mombasa kwenda Nairobi. Nikimalizia, I want to once again thank our partners and our friends from the People's Republic of China for this support, for the elevation of our relationship to a comprehensive, strategic partnership. We will intensify our relationship with a clear vision of a win-win situation that benefits both China and Kenya, and to assure you that we will continue to be your partners as we seek to enhance the shared prosperity of our two peoples. May God bless each and every one of you. Mungu abariki taifa letu la Kenya. Mungu atupe umoja. Mungu atupe amani. Mungu abariki wananchi watukufu wa taifa letu tukufu la Kenya. Kwa hayo machache na mengi, nasema tuanze safari. Asanteni sana.
Tumshangilie Mheshimiwa Rais. Tumshangilie tena kwa makofi na vigelegele na shangwe na nderemo. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Rais. Hivi sasa Mheshimiwa Rais, tutakuwa na fursa ili tuweze kuelekea pale langoni mwa stesheni ili tunaenda kupiga picha kwa pamoja na wathamini wetu, kisha baadaye Mheshimiwa atakata utepe ambao itakuwa ni uzinduzi rasmi kuanzisha stesheni hii, stesheni ya Mombasa. Wananchi tusogee pale karibu, kwa maana Mheshimiwa Rais atakuwa na fursa ya kuwapungia mkono wakati atakapokuwa anaingia ndani ya gari la moshi. Kumbuka historia imeandikwa leo hapa Mombasa. Mheshimiwa Rais wa Jamhuri
President Kenyatta visibly in very high spirits as he prepares to flag off that passenger rail. We're still in studio with Amos Kimunya, who's a former transport minister who's currently vying for Kipipiri legislator, and Ken Gishinga, an economic analyst. Amos, let me start with you because we've heard some very animated statements from the president. He has warned any economic saboteurs that is a capital offense, and that whereas previously, he has not appended the signature to those who face the death sentence, that this time he will not flinch. Your thoughts on that?
I'm very excited with that statement because unfortunately in this country the people do not want to look at the bigger public interest. You'll find a road has been constructed and the guardrails are supposed to be providing security. Somebody comes and removes them at night, right, to sell for cheap scrap metal, and then accidents happen and we lose out on that. Now on this rail, this is a major game changer, and we've already started seeing some economic saboteurs trying to get on to removing the rails, some of the metals. We've seen that on the old rail, people actually getting the whatever piece of metal they can extract from the copper wires and all that. And if we are going to kill this dream, this project for Kenya because of personal benefit, which is actually not even beneficial to the person. You see the same things with the transformers, people bringing down transformers to just get that oil to go and cook chips. These are people who need to be taken very firm action so that people know that they
including
need to
the death penalty.
Well, if you're causing accidents and getting people to die because of your selfishness, then you need some very serious action so that people can be deterred from getting there, right?
So you don't think this is a bluff?
No, I don't think it's a bluff. I think he's very serious on this. Because economic sabotage is everywhere. We saw this happening in 2007, 2008, during that unfortunate period. We saw the uprooting of the railway in Kibera. And President Museveni was up in arms. It was almost getting into a war between Kenya and Uganda, that we are actually sabotaging the Ugandan economy through our own silly politics of uprooting railway. So I think on this railway thing, and on all infrastructural projects, I would actually like to see very stern action taken on people who are sabotaging the national projects for personal gain.
Wow. We've also heard, Ken, news that thrilled the public there, that the cost from Nairobi to Mombasa and the regular side of the train will be 700 shillings. Tell us about that cost. Certainly it's a populist move. Is it affordable and sustainable in the long run?
I mean, obviously it's a very exciting price point, 700 shillings. I could see the excitement right even here in the studio.
Right. Because,
I mean, a lot of people are comparing that with a bus that will charge you anything north of 1,200.
Right.
And expose you to accidents, expose you to time delays. The other side is maybe a flight with Kenya Airways will cost you sometimes anything north of 30,000 to 40,000 shillings. So I think it's a very exciting price point. Whether it's sustainable, because remember we've procured a huge debt, and this debt needs to be repaid. Will this debt be repaid by people paying 700 shillings? Will it be able to maintain the higher network infrastructure, that is the SGR? I think for me those are the questions that are still we have to answer in the long term.
Right. What is your understanding in terms of the management of this rail by the China corporation, rail corporation? To what extent will they be influencing decisions like that in terms of pricing?
I mean, I think the idea to have them on for the next few years was anchored on the fact that they have more experience than their Kenyan counterparts, which I agree. I think a lot of people also wanted to see some knowledge transfer towards the locals, and we've seen some of that. We saw some of our young Kenyans going to China and getting credentials to come and manage the SGR. To the extent that they can influence the pricing, I'm not sure that's within their mandate for it. I think they have a more of a technical mandate than a pricing mandate. But I mean, especially given the fact that the loans are coming from China. But I still believe that there could be a bit of sort of like a balanced approach towards management of the SGR.
All right, Amos, what do you believe would influence the price points?
I think the first thing to remember is that the SGR is about cargo. In the first instance, it's for haulage of cargo. Passenger transport was an add-on. And 700 shillings still represents lower than bus, and everywhere railway transport is usually cheaper than the alternative road transport at the lowest level, which is the bus. So I'm okay with 700. But let's remember also that the repayment of this railway, we've already done all the calculations, was premised on moving so much cargo, and there's a dedicated 40% minimum of all the cargo coming to the port of Mombasa to be hauled by the railway. And the numbers were based on that, not on passengers. So then there's the levy on all the importation. And it's a long-term project. We don't expect repayment within the next 10 to 20 years. It's probably 40, 50 years. That's when you actually get the payback on this massive project. The current railway has been there for the 122 years. It's still going strong. It's still being refurbished. RVR is still working on that. And I'm not quite sure that, you know, if you brought the cost of that investment to current prices and whatever income we've gotten from it, it will probably not have paid itself. Because this is a long-term project, and we don't do it so that it can pay itself. Is to open up the greater opportunities. So I'm very excited with the 700. Mwananchi can afford. Let's get as many families moving into the coast. Remember, as you get Kenyans from upcountry now moving into the coast, is also going to revive the tourism industry. Other coasts, there's people who have invested in hotels, people who have invested in housing. They'll get further use of that. Farmers will actually be able to deliver their food to those hotels in the coast. So the benefits go beyond the 700 shillings that somebody will be paying to the railway. That we just probably pay for the fuel. But the knock-on effects on the wider economy is what, and that ripple effect, that's what is really going to help bring, you know, activate economic growth, activate more revenues for government, so that with the higher taxes and all that, we can be able to even invest in more social projects, in more infrastructure development, in phase 2 from Naivasha to Malaba, and in the LAPSET project from Lamu to South Sudan and to Ethiopia. So let's not look at the numbers. I know people, the wrong timing because of the political season, but the same pricing could have been given last year with all the politics, and it would not have taken the same dimension.
All right. Ken, I want to return to something we were talking about earlier in terms of the debt accrued from projects like these necessary projects, but certainly very costly. And you had said before the break that developing countries should keep their borrowing, or at least the advice globally is to keep their borrowing at below 50% of GDP, and Kenya over that mark, and you know, the government saying they could go up to 60%. To the extent that, you know, global economics is equally global politics, and Kenya has, you know, been very careful even in the phrasing of its economy. It says we're no longer a developing country, we're a middle-income economy, and has, you know, had various, you know, changes in terminology that put us in a bigger league, if you like, being able to play better, being able to borrow, get concessional loans, and you know, that kind of thing. Is it your own estimation that perhaps there could be some politicking in terms of what countries are able to borrow and from whom, and the larger narrative that, you know, the West may be a little bit cautious in terms of the amount of resources that Africa and developing economies get?
I think you're absolutely right. I think the stature of Kenya internationally has significantly grown, and I think you're right in pointing out that economics and politics sometimes make good bedfellows. If you look at Kenya's stature internationally, I mean, we're not just a regional hub. I mean, our president nowadays is attending the G7 summit. Kenya is part of the One Belt, One Road initiative, which the Chinese government called the project of the century. So you're right to say that it's part of a critical cog in a global franchise. That said, we're still a mid-level income economy. Our GDP per capita is still within $1,000, which is still makes us a fairly still fairly humble country, if you like. So you're right in saying that Kenya, there's a Kenya of two realities, and sometimes I feel foreigners sometimes see the bigger side of Kenya than sometimes us Kenyans we do. And you can remember back to the Eurobond. The Eurobond, when it took place, a lot of Kenyans, it was the same weekend as the Mpeketoni clashes, and a lot of Kenyans were arguing that the Eurobond would never take off because of the bad perception that the Mpeketoni clashes were creating. But we saw the next week investors from Europe, from Asia, took up that debt, oversubscribed. So you're right to say sometimes Kenya maybe has a bigger seat at the table internationally, but the reality is when it comes to economics, it's about money, and the reality of debt is you have to pay your debt back. The bigger countries that sometimes we compare ourselves, they borrow in their own currency. Unlike Kenya we still borrow in dollars. So I think sometimes, and if you look at the dollar shilling exchange rate, that's been sliding for quite some time. So if the dollar, for example, hit 110 to the shilling, it would mean we would be forking out much more in interest payments, and these payments would have been going to healthcare, to agriculture, to stimulus projects. So you're right sometimes to say that we still need to respect international economics and remember that our debt ratios needs to be sort of returned back to the 40% that we saw during the Kibaki administration. Yeah,
and Amos, you were part of that administration, and I'm sure you want to comment on, the borrowing levels. Could you give us a bit of perspective in terms of what it was like to borrow under the Kibaki administration and what you're seeing now?
I think the debate on whether to borrow or not and how much to borrow needs to be looked at from the perspective of what are you borrowing for. And the concern globally, especially within the context of the developing countries, has been that most of these countries end up borrowing a lot of money to then invest in military expenditure, into current expenditure, and whose benefits are not quite clear to the common person or how they will help in the repayment of that money. So what we need to be worried about is perhaps not that we are exceeding a 50% or 60% or 70%, but we also need to look at within our budget how much of our budget is being dedicated to recurrent expenditure and how much to development. If we are borrowing 350 billion and putting it onto a project like this, then we borrow another 20 billion and we put it onto Thika Road, borrow another 30 billion and we put it on opening up a development, then I'm not worried with that. But if we are borrowing, whether it's a 1 billion shillings, or whether we're floating a bond next week to pay salaries, then that is the cost for worry. Because once you spend it on recurrent expenditure, you have no capacity to pay that in future, and the issues of sustainability come in. But we took the view around about 2005, 2006, that to grow Kenya from where it was, we needed to invest a lot of money in infrastructure, and there's no other source of getting that infrastructure money except from borrowing. And China, and by coincidence, was also in the market looking for projects to finance, because they had lots of money, they had lots of capacity, they had building infrastructure development, and we started on those projects, and you saw the inflow of Chinese capital coming into Kenya around about 2005, 2006, and what we are seeing today is a continuation of that, because they had the money. Japanese have done it, the Indians have also trying to do it in terms of wooing Africa and saying, we have the funds, we have the capacity, you buy our goods and we provide the money. The Americans
tried it. Chinese money, the preferred money than these other countries.
China is doing it. It's pure from an economic perspective. They're not looking at the politics of it. They don't care much about your politics. They're after, we have Chinese goods to sell. We have Chinese capacity that has been developed. They also have the money. If they can get their companies to sell the goods to any other country, including to America, they will finance. The Americans have also been doing the same, and they are trying to do through the OPIC. That you buy anything American and they'll finance it. But because of their own internal politics, the America First and all that, and the bureaucracy involved, it takes longer than the Chinese. Chinese are quick to do business, right? So people have misunderstood the Chinese and thought there's corruption involved and all that, but If you look at what the current president of China is doing, he's very tough on corruption, and has actually gone head on sorting out corruption, because that was tainting the Chinese image internationally. And all these projects being funded whether by Chinese, Japanese, by that internationally, they are also subjected to international audits. The World Bank is involved, because whatever is happening now, we're borrowing this for the SGR. It's going to be repaid 40 years down the line by generations that are not there now. And it's an international community that kind of safeguards those future generations by looking through, are we overcommitting ourselves? And we haven't had any negative reviews coming on that. So if we remove the politics of it, the economics of Kenya as a country, I think the fact that people are falling over themselves to lend us money is a good indicator that Kenya is considered a country that is able to pay its debts. Right. In any case, Kenya has never defaulted on any of its debts, right? Yeah. Unlike all the other countries in the region.
But Ken, you know, having said that, and you know, this abundance of money out there for grabs, the no strings attached policies is what has worried some governance experts, that, you know, sometimes it is important to have the kind of conditionalities that Western nations put in terms of financing to ensure accountability. We saw the U.S. government just the other day, you know, say that they were not going to continue funding health projects because of accountability issues and poor accounting. What is your own perspective in terms of what is good money? Is cheap money good money?
I mean, I think it's a difficult discussion, because China adopts what they call a non-interference policy, and which is in direct contrast to what the Western regimes use. They always have certain agendas sometimes they would like to see fulfilled. I mean, if you look at a country like the UK, for example, or the United States, and if you look at their view towards Saudi Arabia, you know, Trump just visited Saudi Arabia. He signed contracts worth hundreds of billions of dollars. This is the same Saudi Arabia that does not allow women to drive. It's the same Saudi Arabia that kills people who sometimes profess a different faith.
And he was conspicuously quiet about that.
He was very, very quiet about things. You know, same thing with the UK and during the Gaddafi regime. You know, on the oil prospects. So I think sometimes there's some double speak, and I think sometimes most of these countries, if you look at what they call the ASEAN countries, the Association of Southeastern Nations, they all adopt what you call a non-interfering, because they believe politics is vested in the people. Every constitution begins with we, the people. So as a foreign entity, you have no right sometimes to place conditionalities on those. And that's the reason the IMF has sort of like dropped in profile, because the infamous conditionalities that it has placed from the days of the Moi regime, you know, to countries in West Africa, to Brazil. So I think the world is moving towards more of let our own people take care of our own internal affairs, and let's sort of like have more sort of like economic-based discussions.
Yeah, money makes the world go round, doesn't it? Sam Gituku is live for us in Mombasa. The President Uhuru Kenyatta is aboard this passenger train, and shortly it should be flagged off, the Madaraka Express. Sam, tell us what you are hearing. Certainly we can expect that there should be quite a bit of excitement ahead of this flag off.
Yes, Anne, there's quite some excitement, as you said, the members of the public, the passengers here, getting that moment to be with the President as he flagged off the train. And currently the President is almost moving to his coach where he will be riding, so that he can take part in this journey. But just to indicate that the initial train, that is the first train, the Madaraka Express, has already left the station, and it's heading to Nairobi. But of course they will be doing a stopover at some of the stations so that they can allow the President's train, which he are in, to reach those destinations where he will be making the stopovers, and also they will be in a position at least to get to see him. But where we are in one of the coaches. We'll be expecting to have the come to watch, and he'll be addressing the shortly. We're hoping we can manage to carry that light. It has been expanded to the with the network, of course, because of security considerations. So the expectation is that as soon as he is done with some activity he's doing from outside, he will be stepping into his coach, and then the journey can begin.
Right. Sam, we've also got reports this hour that the Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho was barred from attending this event. Do you have details on that?
Well, I have got that kind of information, but unfortunately from the side I'm not able to independently verify, because as I told you earlier when we spoke, is that we are on the other side of the platform, that is platform number 1, where the passengers are supposed to be boarding. But essentially, if the governor was trying to access this facility, then it should have been the gate. But we do not have the details as yet whether that is correct and why that would be so. Because as I said yesterday during the launch of the train, there was no attempt to bring the governor there. So it's not be appearing that if he has been blocked from this function is not information we have so far.
All right. And Sam, we're just playing some still pictures that we've been able to obtain, and perhaps you can bring that up again, of the Mombasa governor being barred from that event. Perhaps what we could only correlate this issue on is the fact that we heard him days ago saying that he was going to interrupt this particular launch unless the government explained what he claimed was an extra 100 million shillings cost on the operational wow, there goes that word in my tongue, operationalization of this particular express. See, my backyard gives me away all the time. But nonetheless, we'll get more clarification on it. But reports reaching us, and from the pictures you can see there was a bit of a standoff with security officials where the governor was barred from attending the event. Sam, let me return to you. Could you give us an understanding of the sort of people who are aboard this train headed for Nairobi, and what are they saying about that very exciting price point of 700 shillings?
Well, yes, there are several persons, especially Kenyans from all walks of life. You also understand that there has been representation from different counties. We have the county government nominating some few persons to come and board the train. We do not know what their role is, but I had spoken to one of the ladies who was saying that her role, she comes from Makueni County, her role is that she needs to take a selfie with the president. I don't know whether that happened. She has been so excited to be part of this inaugural train. Then there are also 47 children from different counties across the country in a program that is steered by the First Lady, by the main Pures. And the president, once he is aboard the train after addressing the media, we understand that he then goes over to the point where the children are, and he will be having a moment with them before the train can start moving. And then there are other persons, from different counties. There are also several leaders, especially those affiliated to the Jubilee Party. I've seen the gubernatorial candidate for aspirant for Kiambu County, who was won the Jubilee ticket, that is Governor Hussein, the aspirant for the not on Jubilee ticket, which is a large Senator Matawang, the aspirant for Gilgil. So many other leaders who have won the nominations of Jubilee Party when that was done in April. They are also part of this inaugural train, but most of them, they are boarding the first class coaches, so they will be closer to the president as he makes stride. But there are persons, members of the press and security persons of office there with this particular train. Yes.
All right, thank you, Sam. We're going to let you go, and hope to catch up with you once you are actually en route to Nairobi. Our reporter Sam Gituku live for us from the Mariakani station. The pictures you're seeing on your screen are live. We're expecting, we of course heard that the first train has already been flagged off. We're expecting the second to be en route very shortly. In studio with me in the closing moments of our second hour, Amos Kimunya, former transport minister, and Ken Gishinga, an economist. Ken, your final thoughts in terms of the added on economic benefits leave alone being able to transport cargo in record time and at record low points. We're hearing, at least from the Jubilee administration, spin on this, that they're expecting industries to be fostered along the railway line. You're expecting some sort of economic activity. To what extent does that depend on the fact that the rail is there, or on other prevailing economic factors that would empower business people to be able to take advantage of that opportunity?
I think that's a good question. In business, you have something called business confidence and business sentiments, and I think there's an aspirational part to this infrastructure project that maybe is not captured in the numbers. There is what we call the game changer that we always look for in business. So you're right to say sometimes there is a softer issues of aspirations that are captured, but there are harder issues on what we call economic spillovers. This railway is going to go through several stops. Each of those stops is going to be a marketplace where there will be a lot of activity. People coming in, people going out, people buying things. So there will be small mini markets along the way, which of course is going to improve the price of land in that area. Possibly then see the introduction of things like colleges and universities, because students always want to have access to easy transport. So there are definitely some what we call some externalities, then positive externalities that are going to come into this.
Yeah, but there is the projection, the image that you're going to now see mega industries, set up on either side of the railway line. And in terms of real significant economic impact that is of a macro nature, leave alone the microeconomics, do you see that happening, or what other stimuli would be necessary beyond the passing of the rail along that route?
Manufacturing is a whole body of work, and there are many attributes that either entice manufacturers or chase them away. One of them is the cost of power, and that's the reason we've been seeing a lot of big manufacturers leaving Kenya, going to other parts of the world. There's also the issue of the cost of labor. There's the issue of the cost of doing business. So yes, this addresses maybe one area of maybe the cost of time that it takes goods to come and go. But I mean, for you to talk about can manufacturing be a serious part of the Kenyan economy because of one infrastructure project, I think that would be a stretch. But I would say that would be, it can definitely contribute to that direction. But we have to look at other issues on labor and energy, which are not addressed in this project.
All right, so last mile connectivity is going to be critical in terms of seeing, those industries start up. Finally, with you, Ken, there have been the projections by government of, 30,000 direct jobs created by this project, 10,000 indirect ones. What do you think of those figures?
I mean, it's measuring employment in Kenya has always been a very difficult thing. I mean, to this day, nobody can actually look into the eye and tell you the true unemployment rate in Kenya. So when you talk about sometimes increasing jobs, I find it a very hard thing, because we don't have a very, like in the States, they have what they call the jobless reports, where every week people go and file a report on how many jobs were created. In Kenya, we've not fully mechanize that process of job seeking to be able to call it as a statistic. That's my biggest problem with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. I think they still have to capture that. So I think what the number you're tossing out, I think, is an estimate of what probably they're going to see in the local markets and probably the externalities, but it's very hard sometimes in Kenya to be able, because there's the issue of underemployment. People who are only hired for 1 hour, 2 hours in a day, you can't really call that a full-time job. Right. But also you can call that, is that a part-time job? Is that a full-time job? So of that 30,000, are they all part-time jobs? Are they all full-time jobs? So I think, and this goes back to the Bureau of Statistics, I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done to be able to generate these statistics in something that can actually influence policy.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Amos, as we wind up with you, you of course got the Kipipiri ticket on the Jubilee Party, so we expect you to be all smiles right now as far as this project is concerned. In the larger picture of politics, to what extent do you believe today's launch puts Jubilee in a much better position as it seeks votes in August?
I think today's launch of this project is a culmination of a promise that was given in the last election, and it has been delivered. So what does that mean? Jubilee or the Uhuruto team What we promise, we deliver, and in record time. And I think from a political perspective, that sends a signal to Kenyans that all the other promises that are included in the Jubilee Manifesto, the free education from next year, already delivered on the free maternity for the women, the cash for the aged, other infrastructure projects that will be part of this manifesto to take Kenya to the next phase, that there's now a track record that has been established. What is promised is actually delivered and on time. And going forward, whether we remove the politics of it, it's the kind of thing I would like to see even in all the other governments, in all the other political parties. Let's put what have we promised, what have we delivered. We promised to oppose, have we opposed? We promised to deliver, have we actually delivered? And going forward, that is what Vision 2030 was all about. Issue-based politics, devoid of personalities, so that we can move Kenya forward regardless of whether you're in power or in the opposition. And for me, I'm so excited to be part of Jubilee. I'm looking forward to more deliveries of projects. I'm looking forward to further support by the Kenyan people, because we have shown, we promise, we deliver.
All right, and I suppose the support of the Kipipiri people, we'll see. We'll see. Thank you so much for your analysis this morning. We're taking a short break. When we return, we've talked about the rationale of SGR, the economics of it, now to the politics of it. Political analysts will be joining me in our third and final hour of Citizen Extra. Stay with us.